Building Brands podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join Building Brands Marketing, a marketing agency that has successfully scaled multiple brands, as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with the creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. My name is Braden Pope. I am the host of today's episode in the Policy and Profit series. Today on the show, I have Austin Green, who is a representative with Roamly. Austin has helped to develop Roamly into one of the leading brands in the recreational vehicle insurance space. Austin, welcome on the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Braden. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So kind of just jumping right into it, Roamly is a very interesting brand, especially when I first came across the brand. I was kind of excited. I worked in insurance on the insurance tech side, on the small business commercial side for some time. And one of the things we didn't like to touch is RV insurance, recreational vehicle insurance, just because it kind of got complex on the underwriting side. People always had kind of nuanced situations, but Roamly kind of identified that gap in the RV insurance market, recreational vehicle market, and they just took it and ran with it. So how did y'all first identify that need in the market and then get the word out to start building momentum with RV owners?
Yes, that's a great question. And a lot of it actually goes back to our sister/parent company, Outdoorsy. So if you're not familiar with Outdoorsy, the easiest way to describe it is Outdoorsy is the Airbnb of RVs. So we're the largest and most trusted RV rental platform in the US and Canada. And the vast majority of the inventory there is peer-to-peer, individually owned RVs. There's a lot of RVs. I want to say, 1 in 10 households owns an RV. So it's a segment that's bigger than a lot of people realize, but it's historically been a pretty underserved segment. And for better or worse, a lot of people talk about their experience with RVs similar to their experience with something like a boat, where they're like, the first best day of owning an RV is when you buy it, and the second best day is when you sell it. And really the reason it's that way is because people get really excited about the lifestyle, the idea of RVing, but it's work, right? And it's an expensive asset. So I can't remember the exact statistic, but there was a statistic that we used back in probably 2018, 2019 that said the majority of RVs sit in a garage or a driveway unused like 350 days out of the year. So you have these expensive assets, RVs, that historically are typically the second largest purchase you'll make outside of your home that's going unused, right? And this is inventory that other people want to utilize, right? There's kind of this American road trip, I don't know, maybe it's the rugged individualism associated with America, but that's always kind of been a thing, right? And historically it was grandma and grandpa would go buy an RV or rent a vehicle from Cruise America and go around the US. But we wanted to kind of democratize the RV ownership process, or at least create a way for people that owned these assets and didn't get them used as much as they would like to monetize that and put that RV to work when they weren't using it. Now, we were able to build a platform pretty quickly. And by 2018, 2019, I wanted to say we had 20 to 30,000 individual RV hosts on the Outdoorsy platform.
Wow. That's
But
awesome.
as you can imagine, you can't run a marketplace like that with mobile inventory without an exceptional insurance offering. And that insurance offering has to not only protect the person that's renting the RV, in many instances, first-time RV owners who have never driven an RV before, but you also have to protect the underlying asset that they're renting, right? And that's been a core function of our business. We have actually gone out and gotten the licensing, gotten the appointments, worked with major players kind of in the back end of the insurance industry to create a product that powers the Outdoorsy marketplace effectively. And that was really kind of the original birth of Roamly. We don't call it Roamly anymore. We call it Outdoorsy Insurance. But that episodic product that covers the renter and the person renting the RV was really, in essence, the first Roamly product that was brought to market. And since we embedded that product in the outdoorsy marketplace, I don't know what the tally is up to right now, but I'd say it's probably in excess, now that we're in high season this year, of probably $60 million in written premium through that platform. Now, that was kind of how Roamly started, but we also realized that, hey, we've got 20, 30,000 hosts on our platform that are renting out their RVs. Like, this is the lifeblood of our platform, right? Like, supply is what frankly drives the growth of a marketplace like Outdoorsy. But what we found is that the vast majority of these people, had a personal lines insurance policy for their RV, which is normal, right? It's like, you're using it for personal use, you don't need a commercial policy. However, the moment they started renting it out on a platform like Outdoorsy, in the insurer's minds, that becomes a commercial use, right? So we had individuals that were renting out their RVs on Outdoorsy without fully understanding, like, this could potentially create complications in the event of a claim in the future. And not necessarily if there was a claim going back to like an accident that happened while that RV was being rented on the platform Outdoorsy, because we have our own claims team. The insurance product that I was just talking about that we embedded in the marketplace, it would protect the person renting it and the host's asset in the event of an accident, right? We would handle that claim through Outdoorsy and it would be fine. The problem arose that maybe that person that's renting out their RV on Outdoorsy decides they want to take it out for a week, and then they get in an accident when they're using it for their own personal application.
Right.
They go and they submit a claim. The adjuster does their due diligence, right? It's in the best interest of the insurer to make sure that the terms and conditions of the policy is being followed. So there was a world in which that adjuster could come back and say, hey, I actually see that your RV is rented on Outdoorsy. That's against the terms and conditions of the policy. That's a commercial use. There's no way for me to verify that this damage you're claiming took place while you were using it versus a third party that rented that RV through Outdoorsy. I'm going to deny your claim and good luck. We're also dropping you from your policy. That's a huge risk for the hosts on the platform. And for Outdoorsy, it was a massive risk for us, right? Like, we can't suddenly have all of our supply churn from the platform as a function of a gap in their coverage for their RV. So the next step after we had built that episodic product that we embedded in the Outdoorsy marketplace was, we need to build a personal lines RV insurance product that removes rentals on Outdoorsy and other peer-to-peer platforms from the defined list of commercial exclusions. And that way, that would allow hosts on our platform to rent out their RV, on Outdoorsy with peace of mind and not having to worry about, gaps. And the other thing that was, I look back on it and think that's a really smart idea was, the more they rent out their RV on Outdoorsy, the less exposure we would have from a claims and losses perspective on the personal lines product. So the two platforms kind of work together in the sense that the more they rent it out, the less exposure we have on the personal line side. And given that the renter of the RV, when it is being rented out on Outdoorsy, is paying for that insurance product, that product just inherently has a lower loss ratio than a personal lines policy. So we kind of built like an ecosystem for insurance within like a rental ecosystem for RV rentals. And so far it's worked really well. The other thing I would say too is that there was this massive inherent gap, not just for rentals in the RV space, but if you remember like 2015, 2016, 2017, like hashtag van life, like the RV community was like blowing up and it was getting a lot
Right.
younger, right? The travel influencers, all that stuff. And then don't even get me started on the moonshot that was COVID, but a lot more people were getting into the RVing space specifically for camper van conversions. And there wasn't a good insurance company that was insuring these rigs. And given that camper vans outside of trailers was like the number one rented piece of inventory on the Outdoorsy platform, we had a really good understanding of price risk for that asset class. So we began to also write camper van conversions as an RV, as like the first carrier in the space to do that. And it spread like wildfire. If you had a camper van conversion, you were getting a quote and binding a policy from Roamly, because we were really the only carrier that could effectively protect that asset and do it at a reasonable cost for the consumer.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate you kind of walking us through that process of how y'all built out the product, because that's what I think it's crucial for business owners to really understand this, especially if you're starting out your own agency or if you're working from the ground level up. Identify where there's a need in your market. Because if you don't identify that early on and you start offering the same thing that everybody else does, that's immediately going to disqualify you because people already have relationships with other companies, other brands that they already know. So the fact that y'all were able to identify that target market and built a product specifically for it to address that need, I think that separates you from the jump. From a marketing perspective, that excites me because, like, man, y'all did the right thing there. Um, but that kind of drives me to my next question. Now, y'all have an awesome product. Y'all worked out the kinks. Y'all are catching fire specifically on the outdoorsy side. Um, Now, obviously, the partnership with Outdoorsy is awesome. That's kind of how it was a hand in hand approach that helped build your business. Now comes the point, like, how do you grow beyond Outdoorsy? How do you continue to grow to be that number one option? And for people, what has been your most effective way to reach new RV owners and renters, maybe people who weren't familiar with Outdoorsy? Has it been social media, search ads? I know you mentioned partnerships in the past, but what's been that approach there?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get reliant on traditional paid channels, and like we're not immune to that either. Like it's
Hmm.
changing with AI now, but Google historically is, powered, I want to say 90% of like digital transactions,
Yeah.
through their search platform. And obviously if you weren't playing in paid search, whether it was Google's or Bing's or other digital channels, like you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone. So we definitely have, a robust amount of marketing spend that goes into traditional paid search, both brand and general, paid social. We have dedicated affiliate programs for each brand. More on the outdoorsy side, we've even gotten a more brand focused advertising with things like CCTV, which is kind of like a performance brand hybrid. We've done field marketing events. We've done, sponsored trips with influencers. So it's a whole thing, right? And that's not even getting into the kind of more of the embedded partnerships, but I would say we heavily leverage and harvest traditional paid channels like paid search. Was probably, I would say, the biggest for us out the jump. And then paid social is also big for us on the Roamly side, not as much on the outdoorsy side. But partnerships are also another big one too, because for us, especially in the insurance space, like meeting people at the point of sale is wildly important. And that was one of the other things that was a big piece about what's made Roamly successful is, and I kind of touched on this earlier, the RV or just really the recreational lines insurance space is wildly underserved. Before I joined the Roamly team, I worked for an insurtech out of the Bay Area called Gabby that was eventually acquired by Experian. And they power a bunch of other companies' insurance experiences like SoFi, for example, Rocket Money, which I think now is Moneyline, or maybe it was the other way around. Anyway, what resonates with customers is the days of them saying, okay, I've got a new asset. I'm going to call 10 different, insurance companies and get 10 different quotes, or go through a broker and wait for a week to hear back. Like those days are coming to an end, I would say,
Right.
especially for the younger demographic. What works in insurance now is you don't necessarily have to be the most competitive in rates. I would say you don't even necessarily have to offer the most comprehensive coverage. Getting someone a policy quickly in the moment that they need it is wildly important. If you're at the dealership and you're buying a new RV, you are not going to be able to secure financing until you show proof of insurance. So that's been actually a really big partnership avenue for us, and I'll explain more why in a moment. But we were the first RV insurance company to offer a fully end-to-end digital experience. So in companies past, right, or for other major carriers out there, you had to talk to someone on the phone, an agent of sorts. And especially if you were going through kind of like a major carrier, that agent probably doesn't know the difference between a Class A RV and a fifth wheel trailer. Like the big shops out there are at least if they're in the personal lines game, they are 90 to 95%, I would say, traditional home and auto. So offering a digital experience for a product like us that allows you to find and purchase a policy quickly, or at least get a quote online in minutes, as opposed to waiting on hold, talking to an agent that doesn't really know the asset very well, huge value add. And since we were the first one to market with that, it also lent itself extremely well to the digital marketing we were doing, right? We got these individuals through paid search, through paid social, that had at least enough technical prowess to know how to search for things online in a transactional fashion, that had social media platforms. So when we brought them to our website to go through the digital quote flow, we saw strong conversion rates from kind of like the initial click into the funnel to at least rate call one, and in a lot of instances all the way to bind. So that was a huge piece of the puzzle for us, was kind of creating that digital, more technology or tech driven, tech first flow, because there's a huge hunger for that in the market. And while it historically had existed for home and auto, it hadn't found its way into the RV space yet, and definitely not the rec line space as a whole. So that's been a big piece for us on why we've been able to find efficiency in these traditional paid channels. But also it's what's allowed us to really go to market from a partnerships perspective and say, hey, we've got a workflow and experience that can fit with what you do at the point of sale, and you will be surprised at what it will drive you all at the dealership, for example, as an additional revenue stream for you all, while also providing a better customer experience for someone who's purchasing that RV at the point of sale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're touching on here is crucial when it comes to marketing as well. From, when we look at the marketing funnel, top of funnel being awareness, middle of funnel being trust, bottom of funnel being action or purchase. The fact that you all have streamlined that process to be entirely online is huge. And the fact, from the first time people hear about Roamly or they interact with Roamly, they can click on y'all's website, get a quote, and bind that policy entirely online. That marketing funnel has gone from, like you mentioned, 1 week, 2 weeks in the traditional insurance space to a matter of 30, 45 minutes at the most. And so, like, if we're talking about how do we streamline the process for a potential customer and make it so easy for them, you have to make it hard for them to want to look somewhere else, right? Because if you make it so easy where they're like, man, I spent like 20 minutes and I already have everything I need, they're not going to keep shopping. They're going to just buy, like you said, they're not even going to look at the price. They're just going to be like, man, that was so easy, so quick. I'm just going to sign up now and then be done with it, because then they don't want to have to worry about their RV or their asset any longer.
Yep.
And so the fact that you've differentiated yourself in that way is super important, I think, from a marketing perspective. Now, you mentioned, I think, paid tactics in particular, because one of the key things about paid tactics is cost per lead, cost per lead, cost per lead. How do you drive down that cost per lead? And so the fact that that process has been streamlined online also makes it much more likely that once you do pay for that click, or you do pay for that that user to interact with your website, the possibility of them converting is so much higher, because that process has been built out and that structure has been put in place and tested and refined over the last 5-7 years. And so so I guess, out of curiosity, y'all obviously worked with a lot of experts on the insurtech side to develop that insurance product. And then particularly through the paid tactics, are y'all working with, do y'all have a team internally that's managing y'all's paid tactics, or do y'all work with a third-party experts in those areas? What approach have y'all taken on the paid tactics to make those successful for y'all?
Yeah, we really don't leverage much in the way of external agencies. Most of what we do is homegrown. Now, we do have an external agency that helps us with SEO, AEO now, and some just kind of like general content creation and things along those lines. But our paid search, paid social, life cycle, which is unpaid, but pretty much all of our paid channels are managed by individuals in-house, myself included. Awesome. So it's definitely a muscle that we've built. I think in some instances there are times where we need to decouple ourselves a little bit from these paid platforms and really work on diversification. And we do that, right? And that's very important from a marketing perspective. Like, no one ever would have thought it would have been the case, but we're already seeing, like with AI, the days of paid search may be numbered, right? Because a lot less
Mm,
people are clicking on those results these days. It's what does the AI overview say? And then I'll just go to whatever it recommends directly. Now, it's probably in Google's best interest to figure out a way to monetize those AI
for
overviews, whether
sure.
it's through additional paid product placement in those overviews. Who knows? But the landscape is changing dramatically. So it's always important to diversify. But yeah, all of that stuff we manage pretty much in house.
That's awesome. And that's a difficult thing for people to grasp because I'm sure like whenever you're first starting out, you get all different types of calls from Google. They keep telling you you need to increase your ad spend. You need to do this with your campaign. And if you log into a Google ad account, for example, it can be overwhelming the amount of things that Google's recommending that you do. And so it's really important to have a refined skill set, like it sounds like y'all have developed, to be able to look through those things. Say, you know what, Google's recommending this budget adjustment. They're recommending this action on the campaign, but doing what's best for your campaign in the moment. You mentioned scaling back and focusing on AEO in particular and how the market's shifting in that way as well. I couldn't agree more. AEO is, and just for people um, who don't know, it's basically talking about those AI generated overviews. We want to focus on answer engine optimization over search engine optimization. Um, and that what we've been seeing on our end, because we're we focus a lot on SEO. SEO has kind of been our bread and butter the past 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And so the fact that AI has been introduced into that landscape, we are like trying to be as far ahead on that as possible, just
Yeah.
to give our clients the best foot forward. And what we're seeing more and more of importance is the once people do visit your website, we want to make sure that we're maximizing that user experience.
Yeah.
And just like y'all mentioned with your product, the fact that that's built out, the user experience is excellent. They can get what they need in a short time frame. That's what's going to separate you in an AEO world, where you're not going to potentially pop up at the top of Google anymore. But if people do scroll down, they do see your organic result, and they do click on you. That might be less common more, but the fact that you're maximizing that with your on-site process is so important.
Right.
And
For
so,
sure.
yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. Kind of the last couple of questions here. I know you talked a lot about your online experience already, but what, from a marketing perspective, what's one lesson that you've learned in your time with Roamly that you kind of learned the hard way, but you're kind of wanting to share? Okay, maybe we should have done something differently. Just that would help other businesses who are trying to grow, who are in your shoes, five or so years ago.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that comes to mind kind of off the top of my head that actually kind of plays into what we were just talking about. I managed affiliate programs for Roamly and Outdoorsy for a period of time. And if you're familiar with the affiliate marketing space, that landscape and ecosystem has changed. And I don't know if I'd use the word evolved, but it's changed significantly. And it kind of goes back to like making sure that you are like properly diversified and that you have like a healthy marketing mix. Um, the days of like the traditional affiliate blogger that can rank, number one or number two in Google SERPs and drive a ton of good traffic. I would say in most instances, those days are gone, right? Now you still have some like big brands that kind of play in that space, like the Nerd Wallets of the world, maybe the Money.coms, the Benzingas, the Investopedias, but even those folks are losing search share or impression share at least. And like we probably could have been, and myself specifically, could have been a little bit smarter in how we managed the affiliate program, knowing some of those changes were coming. And the big change, obviously, is AEO. But before AEO, one of the other big pieces of that was Google started pushing organic search results down in the favor of a more AdWords placements or Google Ads placements, but also social media. Now, when you search something, you may not see the first result from an organic listing until you're halfway down the page. you've got the AEO overview, you've got your paid search results, and then you typically have social places results. So making sure that you have like a site that's leveraging the correct schema to make sure that you're populating in those areas and that you're always kind of at the top of the search engine. Um, we shouldn't have relied on some of our affiliate partners to drive some of that, the same level of traffic that they did 2, 3 years ago, knowing that these changes were coming and the typical general affiliate was not equipped to deal with them. And I will say that like our affiliates programs have never really been more than, 10, 20% of our overall volume, but even still, having a big decrease in even just one of those channels year to year can have a big impact on your overall AOP, right, in a given year. So, I think being proactive on some of the changes that we were witnessing in real time in the search results, just knowing that, again, Google, even in its current form, now they may be losing some uh, impression share or search share to platforms like Perplexity or Gemini or ChatGPT. Like, we still need to be on the forefront of those and be proactive as opposed to reactive.
All right, sorry about that, everyone. We had lost audio there for a second in video. I'm going to have to finish up off the video. That's okay. Austin, you were mentioning some of your affiliate programs, how the landscape shifting between AEO and search in particular, and how that impacted some of the decisions y'all were making.
Right. Yeah. And at that time I was managing partnerships in the affiliate program. And we saw the impact of the changing SERPs, whether it was, more paid search placements at the results, AI overviews, or even the emergence of like the Reddit and social media responses related to what, you're querying and what's showing up in the SERPs. But, becoming over reliant on any one channel or any one source of traffic is detrimental, right? Because things will change quickly and probably when you least expect them. And, some of those big changes to the SERPs impacts more than just, affiliate programs, obviously, but that's something that we saw that was hit very hard, you know. So making sure that you've got traffic diversified across multiple sources so that you're protected in the event of major changes to a given platform, but also making sure that you're just forward thinking about how trends are going and where things may be headed and trying to be proactive rather than reactive and getting ahead of those things and managing your strategy accordingly is very important. And obviously I think we do a good job of it, but there's been instances where we've been caught with our pants down, for lack of a better term, and you never want to be in that position. So you have to be forward thinking, proactive, and make sure that you've got a good mix if you want to have an effective marketing team.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Austin, for your time. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so my title at Roamly is the director of go-to-market. I manage a lot of our marketing and partnerships and really just a lot of go-to-market strategy. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm also on social media as well, but looking forward to any conversations that may come from this. And, if anyone has any questions, feel free to find me on LinkedIn and ask me directly. And I'm always happy to chat and mind meld as much as possible.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Austin. I appreciate it. And I apologize for the technical difficulties, everyone. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.